Hello, and welcome to this third installment of our four-part series where I've been going through the hidden leaks that may be operating and leaking in your business. And we're using your human design energy centers as the guide. In episode 1, we explored your head, ajna, and throat. In episode 2, we looked at the identity and will centers. And if you haven't had a chance yet, you can find those episodes in the show notes. Now we move into the emotional solar plexus center and the spleen. And we'll be exploring into why fear and emotional timing may be slowing your business growth. I'm doing this series because I've seen in my own life and I've seen with clients how using your centers to identify your potential leaks or identify when you may be in shadow and using then again those centers to help you move back into your light, move back into high expression. So we're going to go through centers by defined and by open. So as a quick reminder, your defined centers are the colored in squares or triangles or diamonds on your chart, and your open are the white. And I'm very excited because I now have a possibility for you to run your human design chart for free on my website. For years, I've been sending my clients and the members of my community to other websites to run their chart for free. And now you may do it right here with me. And you can find that chart running abilities at AllisonScammell.com/chart. And of course, that link is also in the show notes. So, as a quick reminder, if you have openness in a center, that means you take your cues from your environment, from the world around you, the people around you. If you have definition, it comes from within. And our openness is where we are more subject to conditioning because we're absorbing everything around us. And our open centers are also where we are here to be wise. So open centers aren't bad. It's just where we may have a tendency. Remember, human design is all about tendencies or consistencies. We may be consistently or have a tendency to be in shadow more because of conditioning. But the opportunity there is when we decondition, when we heal, and when we step into our light, we really step into the superpowers of the open centers. So we all have all parts of the chart. No part of a chart is good or bad. It all just is. So we're going to start this episode with diagnostics, just to identify where there might be a leak. And then we're going to move into how to patch those leaks up. All right, let's start with the emotional solar plexus center. This is your center for emotional intelligence, feelings, creativity, and social awareness. This center is hugely important because the human design chart is going through a transmutation next year in 2027. It's already started, but it officially starts next year, where our center energetic point of gravity, if you will, inside the chart is moving from the spleen, which we're going to talk about in a hot sec, into the emotional solar plexus or just the emotional center. Why is that important? Because the spleen center is our survival center, and it is where we house a lot of our fear and a lot of our fight and flight. So we're moving from a reactive, responsive way of being in fight or flight from the environment around us to the emotional solar plexus, where we hold emotional frequencies, emotional resonances of visions we have for our life, for the planet, higher visions of higher alignment, of more joy, more love, more connection, more abundance. And we hold the emotional resonance of that vision so that we may manifest those visions. We may align to those visions and we may call those visions into our experience. And that holding of emotional resonance is also called faith. We have the faith in our visions, the belief in ourselves, and we hold these visions until these visions are in our physical reality. We've all done it. You can think of anything that you wanted, look back 10 years ago. Think of something that you wanted to bring into your experience, a dream you had that you experienced, a dream that you fulfilled. When I look back 10 years ago at my business, okay, I went full time on my business in 2016, the same year that I got pregnant with my daughter Freya. So it was kind of a half launch of my business, if you will. But I dreamed back then of having the business I have today, for sure. And let me tell you, I would say especially circa 2018, when I was really trying to make a go of things. I had many dark nights of the soul where I thought, it's not going to happen to me. And then the idea of going back to my old career crushed my soul. I'm a projector, so the idea of going back to a 9 to 5 doubly crushed my soul. And I just dug deep and I said, I have to believe. And that was also the time where my husband lost belief in me. And all I was doing was investing into the business and nothing was coming back. He lost faith. And that's when I realized that I had to have enough faith for the both of us. And I did. And now I am where I am today. And that's the new era we're stepping into. We're able to more powerfully and powerfully hold that emotional resonance of our dreams of tomorrow today so that we may align to those visions and those visions appear in our life. We fulfill them. So let's get into how we can really leverage this energy in our business because it's going to be so important as we move in to 2027 and beyond. So, getting back to your emotional center, if you have definition here, you experience consistent emotional waves. Your clarity comes over time. So, if you ever heard human design folks talk about riding the emotional wave, you're not really meant to make decisions in the moment. You're meant to go through a cycle of emotions. If you're thinking about a question in your life and the answer is either yes or no, you might find that you're in yes energy and then no energy and then yes energy. And so you want to ride that emotional wave until you kind of get to a feeling of neutral again and then look back. Were you more consistently yes or no? And that's going to point you to your most aligned path. Your emotions bring depth, creativity, and truth. If you are open, and I am open here, I am completely open. I have no definition whatsoever in my emotional solar plexus, so I know about this very well. And we feel and amplify the emotions of others. And because we also feel so much, we feel all the feels in the room. When you have openness here, you may avoid sharing your truth to keep the peace and avoid conflict. This is where people pleasing can really be in play because we don't want to feel the conflict if we're going to speak something that we think the other person may not like or may not agree with. I also see a lot with my clients, and I've learned how to step into high expression of this, but you also may find, and this was definitely me, when I first started coaching and healing, when you're open emotionally and you're a coach or a healer and you are feeling called to work maybe with trauma or intense emotions, you may find yourself saying, oh, I can't do this work because it's too difficult for me to be in these big emotions. But oftentimes when people are open emotionally here, we can be, and remember, we all have all parts of the chart. So this is also can be if you have definition, but we can be really, really good working with people who are working through deep and intense emotions because we have that empathy. We feel so strongly, and we can help others bring up their emotions so they can process them, transmute them. But there are ways to protect yourself so that you aren't feeling all the feels, so that you can work with someone who is healing from trauma without taking their trauma on. And that's the lesson for folks who have an open emotional center, how to not take on the emotions around us. And I'm going to get more to that in just a sec because now we're moving into the leaks in your business. So, if you have a defined emotional center, you may find that you're making decisions in the high or low of an emotional wave. You say yes too quickly or no too quickly without riding that wave. You can have a tendency to communicate before your emotions have settled. And this results in a misaligned decision and messages in your business that feel inconsistent. If you are open, of course, we can avoid sharing our truth to prevent conflict. This is when we get into people pleasing energy or softening our message in our business to make everyone happy and take on other emotions and make decisions from that place, from the place of other people's emotions and from trying to please everyone and make everybody feel okay with what you're about to say. And of course, that results in watered down messaging and just sort of a lack of clear direction of where you really want to go. I can definitely say this has shown up in my business. The biggest way was really the sharing the story of my near-death experience. Um, but that was kind of a funny one because it was such a raw, vulnerable, difficult story for me to share. But I had referenced it a lot in my business, but it was like too difficult to tell the whole story. But of course, if you're sitting there referencing all the time, my NDE, of course, your audience, your community is going to want to be like, hey, Allison, well, what is this story? So I was kind of in this weird place where I was too fearful of how my audience would perceive my story. And my open emotional center was feeling too vulnerable to feel all that vulnerability and to feel the emotion of being misunderstood from the story. So I just didn't tell it. But I kept dangling it in podcast episodes and classes, but I wouldn't just tell it. And then finally, one day, I just mustered up the courage and I just told the story. And that's when I realized that I have no control on how my audience perceives me. I can only be in my truth and my authenticity, and those who are meant to receive from it receive, and those who aren't meant, or it's not the right timing, they're not ready yet, won't. And that's okay. So let's talk about how to turn this all around and patch up the leaks. If you have a defined emotional center, give yourself time before making decisions. So important. Let emotional clarity come by riding the wave instead of forcing an answer right away. Communicate once you feel grounded and clear. And when you do, whew, your message will penetrate and it will spread far. If you are open emotionally, follow your strategy, your authority, and your intuition to guide you when it's time to tell the truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. I truly followed my intuition to when to tell my story. I think I got a little bit out of alignment there when I really forced myself. Well, actually, when I reflect back on that, I do believe when I told the story, and it is a 3-part series in this podcast. So if you haven't heard it yet, you can Google Soul Alive Radio near death experience, and those episodes will pop up. And you can find it on my website, AllisonScammell.com/podcast. And it is a really great story if you haven't heard it yet. But I do think I was in alignment because I followed my intuition to the timing of when I told the story. But where I got out of alignment is I was beating myself up in the months and even years before I told the story. And I was beating myself up saying, Allison, you should tell this story. You should tell this story. You're referencing it and you're not telling it. What's wrong with you? And that's when I was indeed in low expression and dipping into the shadow of my emotionally open center here. So if you do have a story that's raw and uncomfortable, allow your intuition to guide you and your strategy and authority to the right timing to tell the story. And just remember, you're not here to manage other people's emotions. You feel them, but you're not here to manage them. So don't hold back your message and what you feel called to do and say and be out of fear of taking on others' people's pain. Okay, let's move on to the spleen center. What this center does is the spleen is your center for intuition, instinct, survival, health, and timing. How interesting is that? This was our center point of energetic focus in human consciousness. These were the things that we really needed to survive when we were, fighting for our survival, which actually wasn't that long ago. And some parts of the planet, people are still fighting day to day to survive. So you rely on your spleen center to know when there's danger around you, dangerous people, dangerous animals, how you're going to find food. It also is that center for intuition and gives you that quiet in the moment guidance. I'm a splenic projector, so this is a big part of my divine compass, if you will. I get these hits in the moment, and they are different than when I just ask my intuition a question. I really feel like these are two different things. So I can ask my intuition a question anytime I want guidance on anything. But when I'm just going about my day, going about my business, and then all of a sudden this intuitive hit comes in, bam, and it just hits me, and I know it's a splenic hit, and those are the ones that I actually pay attention to most because I won't say always, I think sometimes I hear human design people say, "They'll never come back," I don't think that's true. I think if you miss it in the moment, it's always gonna keep coming back, but in different ways until it gets your attention because that's how divine guidance works, and our authority is part of our divine guidance system, our energetic guidance system. But if you can start to teach yourself, and this is true whether you have splenic authority or not, to start listening to those intuitive, just instinct hits that you get in the moment. If you have sacral authority, if you're a generator or manifesting generator, you'll get those gut responses in the moment. If you're a manifester, you'll get that nudge to follow your creative flow. If you're a projector, you're likely, even if you don't have splenic authority, you're likely going to get those hits, those inspirational hits that sort of give you that clarity of that projector work you're supposed to do. I call it that projector lighthouse work, how you stand in your lighthouse and offer your gifts. And for reflectors, you're so open. It's all about your environment. And your spleen is really going to guide you to those environments and those people and that community that's going to enable you to be in real high expression of your energy. If you have a defined energy here in the spleen, you have consistent access to intuitive knowing. If you're open, of course, you do too, but yours might be a little bit more inconsistent, you may find. Your instincts are reliable and speak in subtle but immediate signals. And if you have definition here, you will likely to have a very strong immune system. If you have open expression here, and again, as a reminder, this is where you are meant to be wise and learn lessons. So you are sensitive to fear, and can hold on to things longer than what serves you. And I have like tons of definition here in the spleen. I've got the center defined, and I've got 4 of the gates of the spleen defined. And the spleen gates really can guide you to the different types of fears that you may be holding on consistently. Fear of the past, fear of failure, fear of not being true to your mission in life. It's a good idea to get to know the gates of the spleen if you have definition. And if you're all open here, and really, I think what openness really means is that you really are going to want to hold on to things and for longer, hold on to things in your house, physical things. Hold on to people that don't serve you anymore. Hold on to pains of the past. And you may at times find that you struggle to trust your instincts. So, where does this leak in your business? With a defined spleen, you may ignore your intuitive hits. I know I did this for a while and override them with logic or pressure. You may stay in situations, offers, or strategies longer than you should, kind of in the similar theme of the open center, and you miss the timing of when to act or move on. So, this results in misaligned decisions and missed opportunities. With an open spleen, you can become paralyzed by fear or worst case thinking. I see this a lot with clients. You hold on to clients' offers or patterns then longer than you should that don't serve you anymore, and you may delay action because something feels unsafe. The result is stagnation and not moving forward in your business the way you really want to. So let's turn this around. With a defined spleen, you patch up your leaks by really trusting your first intuitive hit and acting on it, letting go of what no longer feels aligned more quickly, and honoring timing instead of overriding your instincts. With an open spleen, recognize when fear is driving your decisions. Practice letting go of what feels safe but is no longer aligned. And I think this is what we can fall into, whatever your spleen looks like, because it's a theme of the center generally, is we all need to let go of those things that feel safe in the business, but are indeed no longer aligned. Trust your body and your intuitive signals and really build up a practice of that trust. My invitation for you this week is to notice where fear and emotional timing are driving your decisions, meaning you're not allowing your emotional wave to ride and you're making choices before you feel ready. Where are you reacting from an emotional high or low instead of waiting for clarity? Where are you avoiding your truth to keep the peace? Where are you holding back or staying stuck because something feels unsafe? Pick just one place where this may be happening or a variation thereof and shift it. Give yourself space before making a decision. Tell the truth if the timing feels right, even if it feels uncomfortable. Take one small action your intuition is nudging you toward today. Let this be the week where you trust your timing and your inner signals. That's when decisions become clean and your business starts to move forward. That's a wrap for this week. I'll be back in your earbuds next week to explore our final 2 centers, the root and the sacral. And as always, until next time, may you be soul alive.